is designed to encourage us all to make the church that we're a part of a legacy that our children after us and their children after them can look back and say, this is what we received from our great-grandmother, great-grandfather, or other members of that family. So we're looking at intentional legacy, something that is very important. When you are focused on handing something down to the next generation, it becomes very important, church. Now, when you become a part of a church family, you are becoming part of something beyond your own life. A church is part of what you call a cause to live for. It transcends your own personal, private ambitions, all right? The church rises above. Now, every one of us have a legitimate right to have a personal, intentional life vision. That's wonderful. Everyone needs that. What I would like to encourage you to remember is that the church requires you to think beyond self. All right? We can never become so self-absorbed that we forget why we were born and created and put upon the earth. Not to necessarily just fulfill our own desires, but what about a higher, more nobler purpose? What will we add to the church of the living God when our journey has ended on this life?
Amen.
What contributions? I'm not talking about financial. I'm talking about how much a part of the church will become part of your legacy that will follow you and your children and the children that they will bring on. Now, I never like to bring up my own personal life in a situation, but I'm going to take an exception to that rule today. When I was 8 years old, my father was suddenly taken out of my life in 1 second by a bolt of lightning over here at the Four Rivers Conservation Commission. Now, up until that moment in time, my intentional vision or my intentional life vocation was so clouded, I was like every other 8-year-old. I didn't even know or have a clue why I had been born at that point in my life. All I knew that when my father disappeared from my life, I clung tenaciously on one idea, and that idea is that he moved from the Colorado Rockies in a 1934 Ford pickup, pulling a stock trailer where he hauled about 20 horses from the Rockies over here, and he hauled them 3 at a time. It was a 4-day operation. We camped the horses out at night, and we traveled about 35 miles an hour. Been driving across to Colorado, that's a long trip.
Oh my gosh.
Well, that journey, that repeated journey left such an imprint on my mind that at 8 years of age, I was very impressed with the idea that my father would move from the Colorado Rockies all the way to a muggy, hot, sugar-ridden climate where there was no electricity and there was nothing but muddy roads in the wintertime. But it left an impression on me. So when my father died, I just automatically took on his intentional life vision. So all through my grade school years and high school years, my goal was simply reduced to one thought. How can I mold my life into the future of the legacy that my father was determined to initiate? So I planned my high school. My courses of study were built around what I thought would be the most enhancing subject area that would allow me to maybe carve out a place in rural southwest Missouri. I wasn't sure how this was all going to happen by any means. But that was my goal, and I followed that idea through all of my course of study at Missouri State University. I took courses. All my elective courses in college were designed to answer one question: can that course be responsive to any need that I could ever see or imagine in a church? Now, a good many of them had no relevance at all, but they were required. But on every occasion where there was an opportunity to make a choice, I was always choosing with the idea, what can I do to make my life valuable for the church of the living God?
Amen.
And that's what I'm asking everyone here today. Because every church has a legacy. And that legacy is dependent upon every generation coming forward to stand on the shoulders of those who preceded them in their time of history. Now, my humble belief today, church, is this. I say this in all sincerity. I believe that we have young people coming on in this congregation that are far superior to the generation that I was growing up in at their time in history. So I applaud them and I give God all glory because I believe that there's a generation that will carry this church forward.
Amen.
No doubt about it.
Amen.
That is not a question in my mind, but that does require commitment. And the sooner the commitment is made, the more quickly we can be about our Father's business. When they looked for Jesus one time when he was lost at a feast of Passover, they couldn't find a 12-year-old boy. They searched 3 days to find Jesus. Mary and Joseph were beside themselves. Where is our son? We thought he was with the company that had come to keep Passover. We're part of the journey, part of the way home, and we can't find our son. So they have to go all the way back to Jerusalem to find Jesus. And then it took them 2 or 3 days to find him. They found him in the last place they imagined, in God's house. That's where Jesus was. He was in dialogue with all the theologians of the temple. 12 years of age. 12 years of age. Amen. How many can see that Jesus had an intentional,
Amen,
vocational mind?
Amen.
See, all I'm suggesting here today, church, is that if you want to have a part of a church in your life, if you want to really be successful, if you want to live your life to the fullest, and at the end of the journey say, praise God, what a life God gave me, make room for the church in your life.
Amen.
Don't move out of your orbit and then become so self-absorbed that you lose all vision of a church in your life.
Amen.
If not this church, some church. Now, this is a very, very dangerous road that we're traveling in 21st century America, because more and more and more Americans today are unchurched. They have no church. Now, I didn't know if the word unchurched was a word that was in the dictionary, but I looked it up. What is the definition of the word unchurched? And I looked it up, And it means, very simple, somebody that has no connection to a church. It's very simple. But it's becoming the new normal for America today. And it's not normal at all.
Amen.
To live without a church. I don't know if I'm reaching into anyone's heart today, but I hope the Holy Spirit is. Because I'm trying to encourage everyone numbered in this flock this morning to know that there's something bigger than your life. There's something greater than you are. There's something that's more noble than anything you will ever build in this world. And it's the church that Jesus died and gave his life. That he was resurrected from the dead for and rose to bring life to his children. Think about it this way. 100 years from today, all the highest priorities of your life will mean nothing. You listening? Take a pencil and prioritize all the important things that you can list about your life and your family today. Make a list of all of the most important things in your life. Now, there's a lot of important things in our life. We have to worry about food, clothing, shelter, transportation. We have to worry about jobs and vocations. We have to do our lives are just filled with all kinds of detail. But 100 years from now, only one part of your life will matter.
None.
There's only one little sliver of your life that will count for all eternity, and it's what you did with the God factor in your life. What did you do with God? And how big a place did God hold in your life? That's why in building a family legacy, your spiritual life in that family is going to determine largely what the legacy will be. And the church is designed to augment, enhance, and help you make a family legacy possible. But if you withdraw family, or if a family's disengaged or separated, has no church life, then that family is crippled from the beginning. They're already crippled without a church. I hope you see that. So important. So we think of intentional legacy. When we think of intentional legacy of a church, we're talking about a gathering of people who are interested in the ultimate destiny of their soul. What is the eternal destiny of the soul of your children? Parents, as long as the children are under our care and custody, we have a definitive responsibility for the spiritual welfare of their little souls. That is our duty. Help me now. It is the duty of parents to watch over the spiritual destiny of the souls of their children.
Amen.
All the while they're under your custody.
Amen.
If you separate your children out from a body of believers where they do not identify early in their lives, oh, that's a church day, we can't do this, we're going to be in church. They learn early in life that you build a hedge around the church because it's a priority in your life.
Amen.
It becomes a priority because we're talking about the eternal destiny of your soul. We're talking about life beyond this life. All the other priorities of your life will terminate at somewhere along the line. At some point, it will no longer matter how many college degrees you have. At some point, it will no longer matter how much money you make or have amassed or how much wealth you may have assembled.
Amen.
It will be of no consequence. 100 years from now, the only thing that's going to matter is what did you do in this present world to please God. That's all that's going to matter. If the state of your soul has been made right in this world, you will have gained the greatest, most blessed treasure that there is to gain on this earth. And that's called everlasting life. There's a verse found in the Gospel of John, chapter 20, verse 31. But these were written. What was written? The words of the Gospel of John. These were written that ye might believe in Jesus Christ, the only begotten Son of God, and that believing ye might have life through his name.
Amen.
So important that we have a focused, intentional vision of making the church part of our life. You see, people, it has to become intentional in your life. I want you to think for a moment of some of the dedication that has been revealed and demonstrated by people that are numbered in this church. Think of the sacrifices. Now, young people, here's what I'd like to ask you. What do you know about your parents today with regard to their investment in being part of, let's say, this church? Now, it could be another church, but in this case, we're talking about here, Church of Israel. So do you have any idea what kind of an investment preceded you in time? Have you thought about the investment that your forebears made that you might be here today? Have you thought about that? What is the legacy that they have given you? What do you owe to those who preceded you? You might remember that you don't have to necessarily, we're not talking about people that lived here, but everyone has people that preceded you in time and history. And they gave to all of us something. We may not appreciate everything that we inherited from them, but a lot of the good we surely do. If your children dare grow up without being rooted and grounded in a church, they will miss the most important dimension of their life in this world. I know today, people, what is wrong. I know that there's lots and lots of things wrong in 21st century America with regard to the churches. God only knows what is wrong.